Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Learn English with Podcast Conversation. We are thrilled to have you with us today. In this podcast, we focus on helping you improve your English speaking and listening skills. By listening to our conversations, you can learn how to communicate more confidently in real-life situations. Whether you're a beginner or intermediate English learner, we're here to help you speak English fluently.
Yes, Jennifer, and today's episode is especially exciting because we're talking about a topic that everyone encounters daily: greetings and starting conversations. Knowing how to greet people and start small talk is essential in building connections. We'll be sharing practical tips and useful phrases that will make you feel more comfortable when meeting new people or catching up with acquaintances. Ready to dive in?
Absolutely. So let's start with something simple but powerful: common greetings and polite phrases. These are the foundations of any conversation, and using the right greeting can help set the tone for a positive interaction. We'll walk you through not just the basics, but also more nuanced greetings that you can use in different settings. All right, Thomas, let's start with the most basic yet widely used greetings. When you meet someone, a simple hello or hi works wonders. But you can also say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on the time of day. These are great for more formal settings too. A polite phrase I use often is, "How are you?" It's an easy way to show interest in the other person.
Exactly, and depending on the situation, you can add a little more to that greeting. For example, if you're meeting someone at work, you could say, "Hi, how's your day going so far?" It's casual, but it opens up room for further conversation. If you want to be more formal, you can say, "It's a pleasure to meet you." These small variations help build rapport, whether you're talking to a friend or a colleague.
That's true. I also love using phrases like, "It's nice to see you again," when I run into someone I already know. It makes the person feel valued, and the conversation starts on a warm note. If you're meeting someone for the first time, you can say, "It's great to finally meet you," if you've spoken online or on the phone before. That adds a personal touch to the greeting.
Another good tip is to pay attention to cultural differences. For example, in some countries, people might use more formal greetings, like "How do you do?" while in others, a simple "Hey" is perfectly fine. So, it's always a good idea to adjust your greetings based on where you are and who you're talking to. It makes your communication more effective.
Yes, exactly. And don't forget about nonverbal greetings too, like a smile or a handshake. These go hand in hand with your words and can make your greeting feel even more sincere. Just a small gesture like this can break the ice.
Now that we've covered greetings, let's move on to starting conversations. Once you've said hi or hello, how do you keep the conversation going, especially if you're talking to someone new? One great way to start is by asking a question. People generally love to talk about themselves. So, questions like "How's your day going?" or "What do you think of this event?" work well in most situations.
That's such a great point. Questions are key. And if you're in a setting where you're meeting someone new, like at a party or a work event, you can ask something related to the occasion, like, "How do you know the host?" or "What brings you here today?" These are light, easy conversation starters that don't feel intrusive.
And if you want to make things even easier, you can use observation-based questions. For example, you can comment on the setting, like, "Isn't the weather lovely today?" or "This place is really nice. Have you been here before?" These questions are non-threatening and allow the person to respond without feeling pressured.
Yes, observation-based questions are a lifesaver when you don't know much about the other person. You can also comment on something you both share, like, "I see you've got a coffee. I love the coffee here." Small talk doesn't have to be complicated. It's about finding common ground and making the other person feel comfortable.
Another important tip is to listen actively. Once you've asked a question, be genuinely interested in the answer. People can sense when you're just asking for the sake of it. Follow up on their response with more questions or comments. If someone says they've had a busy day, you can ask, "Oh, what's been keeping you busy?" Or "How do you usually unwind after a busy day?"
Yes, and by showing genuine interest, you build a connection. Starting conversations is all about building comfort and trust. When you ask open-ended questions and listen carefully, you're showing that you care about the conversation, which encourages the other person to keep talking. Now let's move on to small talk phrases that you can use during introductions. For example, if you're meeting someone at a social gathering, you could say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I don't think we've met before. What's your name?" It's a straightforward, polite introduction that invites the other person to share their name.
That's a great example, Jennifer. Another simple phrase is, "Nice to meet you. So, what do you do?" It's an easy way to lead into a more in-depth conversation. If the person talks about their job or interests, you can follow up with, "That sounds interesting. Tell me more about it." It keeps the conversation flowing naturally.
Yes, you can also use phrases like, "I'm new around here. Are you from this area?" Or, "I've heard great things about this event. Have you been here before?" These phrases are light and keep the conversation going without putting too much pressure on the other person to come up with something to say.
And don't forget to throw in some positive remarks. Phrases like, "This seems like a fun place," or "I'm really enjoying myself," can set a positive tone for the conversation. It makes the interaction feel friendly and inviting, which is exactly what you want when making small talk.
Absolutely. The key to small talk is to keep things light, friendly, and engaging. You don't have to dive into heavy topics right away. It's all about creating a comfortable space for conversation. We'll give you more examples in the next segment.
Another great way to keep the conversation going, especially when you're meeting someone for the first time, is by giving a compliment. Compliments make people feel good and appreciated. You can say something simple like, "I like your jacket," or "That's a great choice of shoes." It's a nice icebreaker and often makes the other person feel more comfortable.
I agree, Thomas. Compliments can be a great tool, but make sure they're genuine. You don't want to sound insincere or like you're just trying to make small talk. Complimenting someone on something specific, like their taste in music or the book they're reading, can be a good way to connect. For example, "I see you're reading a book on history." "I love history too. What's your favorite era?"
Yes, and that's the key. It has to feel natural. Compliments that relate to the situation are also great. For example, if you're at a conference, you could say, "You asked a really insightful question during the talk earlier," or at a party, "You have great taste in music. I'm really enjoying the playlist." These comments open up room for conversation and show that you're paying attention.
That's so true. Compliments can work wonders when used the right way. They give the conversation a positive tone and encourage the other person to open up more. The trick is to always be genuine. You can always follow up with a question to keep the conversation flowing, like, "Where did you get that jacket?" Or, "What other types of books do you enjoy reading?" Let's talk about something that everyone dreads in a conversation: awkward silences. No matter how skilled you are at small talk, sometimes conversations hit a dead spot. It happens to everyone, but the good news is that there are ways to recover smoothly.
Absolutely. Awkward silences are completely normal, especially if you're still getting to know someone. One of my go-to strategies is to reference something you were talking about earlier. For example, if you've already discussed the weather, you could say, "By the way, do you like the winter season?" or "Are you more of a summer person?" It's an easy way to keep the conversation moving.
That's a great tip, Thomas. Another way to deal with awkward silences is to switch topics. If you feel like the conversation is drying up, try steering it in a new direction. You can say something like, "So, what are your plans for the weekend?" Or, "Have you seen any good movies lately?" These kinds of questions help reset the conversation and give the other person a chance to share something new.
And if you feel like the silence is really stretching out, you can always acknowledge it with humor. For example, you could say something like, "Wow, we must both be deep in thought." It lightens the mood and gives the other person a chance to laugh and relax.
Exactly. Humor is a great tool in breaking the ice. And sometimes, simply smiling or showing that you're comfortable with a brief pause can ease the tension. Don't feel pressured to fill every second of silence sometimes. Taking a moment to think before responding can actually make the conversation feel more natural.
As much as we love starting conversations, we also need to know how to end them politely. It's important to leave a conversation on a positive note, especially if you're meeting someone for the first time. One simple way to do this is to say something like, "It was really nice talking to you. I hope we can chat again soon."
That's a great way to wrap things up. You can also offer to exchange contact information if you feel like you've made a connection. For example, let's exchange numbers or connect on LinkedIn. If it's someone you might see again, like a colleague or classmate, you can say, "I'll catch up with you later." It leaves the conversation open-ended and friendly.
Yes, and don't forget to thank the person for their time. Something as simple as "thanks for the great conversation" can leave a lasting positive impression. If you're at a social event, you can excuse yourself by saying, "I should probably say hello to some other people, but it was great meeting you."
Exactly. Being polite and showing appreciation is key. It also makes it easier to reconnect with that person in the future. Ending conversations doesn't have to be awkward. You can always end on a positive, friendly note. One thing that can happen when you're meeting people frequently, especially in social or work environments, is that the same small talk topics come up again and again. You might feel like you're constantly talking about the weather or how your weekend went. So, Thomas, how do you keep it fresh when these repeated topics come up?
Great question, Jennifer. When small talk topics feel repetitive, one trick is to add a personal twist to the conversation. If someone asks about the weather, instead of just saying, "Yeah, it's sunny today," you could add a story. For example, "It's sunny today, and it reminds me of that time last year when I went hiking and got caught in a sudden storm." Sharing something personal makes the conversation feel more unique, even if it's a common topic.
I love that approach. It makes a simple topic more engaging and gives the other person something new to respond to. You can also ask more specific questions to shift the focus instead of "How was your weekend?" You can ask, "What's the most interesting thing you did this weekend?" It encourages the person to think beyond the usual answers and opens up more interesting conversations.
Absolutely. Another way to handle repeated topics is to show genuine curiosity. Even if you've talked about the same thing before, you can deepen the conversation by asking more follow-up questions. For example, if you're talking about the weather again, you could ask, "Have you ever experienced extreme weather like a hurricane or blizzard?" It turns a simple topic into something more engaging.
That's a great strategy, Thomas. You're showing that you're interested in the person's experiences, which keeps the conversation from feeling stale. And if you've already talked about a particular topic with someone before, you can always bring in new information. If you talked about the weather last week, this time you could mention something like, "I read an article about how this year's weather patterns are unusual." It gives the conversation a fresh angle.
Now, Jennifer, small talk can be a little tricky when you're speaking to someone from a different culture. Some topics that are common in one country might not be so common in another. How do you handle those cultural differences when you're trying to make small talk?
That's such an important point, Thomas. Different cultures have different norms when it comes to conversation, especially small talk. In some cultures, for example, talking about the weather might be common, but in others, it could feel unnecessary or even strange. It's always a good idea to be aware of the cultural context. I think the best approach is to be open-minded and observant. If you're not sure what topics are appropriate, you can start with something neutral, like asking about the person's interests or hobbies.
Exactly. You can't go wrong with asking about general topics like hobbies, travel, or food. Those are often safe in most cultures. And if you notice that a particular topic isn't going well, it's okay to switch gears. If the person seems uninterested in the weather or local news, you could steer the conversation towards something broader, like what kind of activities do you enjoy in your free time?
Yes, and it's also important to be mindful of what topics to avoid. In some cultures, talking about personal matters like family or income can feel too intrusive, especially during small talk with someone you don't know well. Observing the other person's body language and responses is a good way to see if a topic is making them uncomfortable.
Right, reading body language is key. You can tell a lot from how engaged the other person seems. If they're giving short answers or looking away, it might be a sign that the topic isn't working for them. And don't be afraid to ask them directly if there's something they enjoy talking about. A simple question like, "What do people usually talk about in your country when they meet someone new?" can show that you're respectful and curious about their culture.
That's a great point, Thomas. Asking about their culture's norms shows you're interested in learning more, and it can even deepen the conversation. It's a way of showing respect, which is important when building any connection. Cultural differences can actually make small talk more interesting because it opens up new perspectives. One thing to remember is that small talk isn't just about the words you say, it's also about the context in which you're having the conversation. For example, small talk at a casual social event is different from small talk at a work meeting or networking event. So, Thomas, how do you adapt your small talk based on the situation?
That's a great question, Jennifer. The setting really does matter. In more formal situations, like a work meeting or professional event, I tend to keep the small talk light and focused on neutral topics. You might talk about something like the event itself. Have you been to a similar conference before? Or even about the business environment, like asking, "What trends are you noticing in your industry?" This keeps the conversation professional but still friendly.
I agree. And at more casual events, like a party or a social gathering, you can be a little more relaxed with your topics. People are usually more open to talking about personal experiences, such as travel, hobbies, or even favorite shows they're watching. It's a great way to get to know someone on a more personal level without getting too serious. It's also fun to share stories in these situations.
Exactly. Casual events are perfect for sharing those personal stories, and you can ask more lighthearted questions. For example, at a dinner party, you might ask, "What's your favorite kind of cuisine?" Or, "What's the best restaurant you've been to recently?" These types of questions are more relaxed but still show genuine interest in the other person.
Sometimes, small talk can lead to awkward moments. You know when you ask someone a question, and they give you a one-word answer. It can feel a bit uncomfortable. How do you handle those moments, Thomas?
That's a common challenge. When I find myself in that situation, I try to pivot the conversation to a different topic. For instance, if I ask about someone's weekend and they just say, "It was fine," I might say, "Oh, did you get to do anything fun?" This encourages them to open up a bit more. If they still seem closed off, I might share something about my own weekend to create a more engaging dialogue.
That's a smart approach. Sometimes sharing a bit of personal information can help break the ice. I also think it's important to stay relaxed during those awkward moments. If you get nervous, it can make the situation feel more uncomfortable. Just laugh it off or make a light joke if appropriate. Humor can be a great way to ease tension.
Absolutely. If you can make a joke about the situation or even about the weather, it lightens the mood. For example, if there's an awkward pause, saying something like, "Well, at least we can agree that the weather is unpredictable," can get a laugh and shift the conversation in a more comfortable direction.
Now, let's talk about closing conversations. You've had a nice chat, but you want to move on without it feeling abrupt. How do you do that, Thomas?
Great point, Jennifer. A smooth exit is important in small talk. I often say something like, "It was great talking with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day." This gives a polite ending and shows appreciation for the conversation. If you want to stay connected, you can also add, "Let's catch up again soon."
I like that. It gives the other person a positive feeling about the conversation. Another option could be to mention a specific point from your talk. For example, if you talked about a recent movie, you could say, "I'll have to check out that movie you mentioned." Have a great day. This makes the conversation feel more personalized.
Exactly. Personalizing the goodbye reinforces the connection you've made. It leaves the door open for future interactions and creates a positive memory of the conversation.
One thing a lot of English learners struggle with is confidence when starting conversations. They often worry about making mistakes or not being understood. Thomas, how do you think someone can build their confidence in small talk?
That's a great point, Jennifer. Confidence comes with practice, but also with mindset. I always encourage people to remember that making mistakes is part of learning. Native speakers aren't judging you for small errors. They're usually just happy you're trying to communicate. A helpful tip is to start with low-pressure situations, like talking to a store clerk or someone at a coffee shop. These short interactions can boost your confidence over time.
Yes, that's true. Those small steps help you get more comfortable. And I think another way to build confidence is to have a few phrases or questions ready to use. For example, when you meet someone, you could say, "Hi, I don't think we've met before. I'm Jennifer. How are you?" Simple phrases like this can help you feel more prepared and reduce any anxiety.
Absolutely. It's almost like having a mental toolkit of phrases you can use. And over time, you'll naturally start to expand that toolkit as you become more familiar with different conversation topics.
Speaking of confidence, language barriers can sometimes make small talk difficult, especially if you're in a place where English isn't the main language. How would you recommend overcoming those barriers, Thomas?
Good question. When facing a language barrier, one thing you can do is focus on clear and simple communication. Slow down your speech a little and use basic vocabulary. It's also helpful to use body language. Smiling, nodding, or using hand gestures can clarify what you're trying to say. If the other person struggles with English, they might appreciate that you're making an effort to communicate clearly.
Yes, nonverbal communication is key also. Don't be afraid to ask for clarification. If you didn't understand something, just say, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Or "Can you explain that a little more?" It's okay to not catch everything, and most people will be happy to repeat or explain.
Exactly. And if there's still confusion, try rephrasing what you said or using synonyms. This can help the conversation flow more smoothly. And remember, everyone faces language challenges at some point, so it's nothing to feel embarrassed about.
That brings us to an interesting topic: cultural differences in small talk. How people engage in conversations can vary from one culture to another. Thomas, have you noticed this while traveling or talking to people from different backgrounds?
Definitely, Jennifer. In some cultures, small talk is more direct and brief, while in others, it's more detailed and personal. For example, in some Western cultures, it's common to ask, "How's your day going?" Even if you don't know the person well, but in other cultures, that might feel too personal for a first conversation. It's important to be mindful of these differences and adjust your approach based on the person you're speaking with.
That's so true. I found that learning about the other person's culture beforehand can be really helpful. For instance, in Japan, small talk tends to be more polite and formal, while in the US, people are more casual in their approach. Being aware of these nuances can make your conversations more effective and respectful.
Exactly. And if you're unsure, it's okay to observe and learn from the other person's body language and responses. Cultural sensitivity goes a long way in building good rapport during small talk. Another way to keep a conversation going is by asking for the other person's opinion. People enjoy sharing their thoughts, and it's a great way to make small talk more engaging. For example, if you're talking about the weather, you could say something like, "What do you think about this hot weather? Do you prefer warmer or cooler seasons?"
Yes, asking for opinions adds depth to the conversation. Instead of just commenting on something, you're opening the door for the other person to share their perspective. It also shows that you're interested in what they have to say. You could even ask about more neutral topics like, "Do you like the weather here?" Or "Do you prefer it back home?" It's simple but effective.
Right, and when you ask open-ended questions like these, it encourages the other person to talk more. They're not just answering with a yes or no, but actually sharing their preferences or experiences. It makes the small talk feel more like a real connection rather than just a polite exchange.
Exactly. It's all about making the other person feel comfortable and valued in the conversation. Asking for opinions is a great way to do that. One of the biggest fears people have in small talk is dealing with awkward silences. It can make you feel nervous, like you're failing at the conversation. Thomas, do you have any tips for handling those moments?
The dreaded awkward silence. It happens to everyone, so the first thing to remember is not to panic. Sometimes a short pause is completely natural and can even give both people a chance to think of something new to say. If the silence lasts a bit longer than comfortable, you can always bring up another topic or even circle back to something the other person mentioned earlier. For example, if you've talked about the weather, you might ask, "By the way, do you have any fun plans for the weekend?"
That's a great strategy. Another approach could be to acknowledge the silence in a light-hearted way, like, "Well, it looks like we've run out of weather to talk about." So, what else is new? It breaks the tension and gives both people a chance to laugh it off and move on to another topic.
Exactly. Humor is a fantastic way to handle awkward moments. And if you're really stuck, you can always ask the other person about themselves. People usually feel comfortable talking about their own experiences or interests. Social events like parties or networking events are often the perfect settings for small talk. But they can also be intimidating if you don't know anyone there. Jennifer, how do you start conversations in these situations?
Great question. At social events, one of the easiest ways to start small talk is by commenting on something you both share, like the event itself. You can say something like, "This is a great event, isn't it? How did you hear about it?" Or if it's a more formal setting, you could ask, "What brings you to this event?" It's a natural way to kick off a conversation without feeling too forced.
That's true. I also think that being approachable is important. A friendly smile or open body language can invite others to start conversations with you as well. If you're standing in a group or near the refreshments, people might feel more comfortable joining the conversation. Once someone is nearby, you can easily ask, "Have you tried the snacks yet?" Or something casual like that to get things going.
Exactly. Being approachable really helps. And don't be afraid to introduce yourself first. It shows confidence, and most people will appreciate that. You can simply say, "Hi, I'm Jennifer. I don't think we've met yet. What's your name?" It's straightforward and opens the door for more conversation. Hobbies are another great topic for small talk. Everyone has something they enjoy doing in their free time, whether it's reading, playing sports, or watching movies. You can start by casually asking, "So, do you have any hobbies or things you like to do in your spare time?"
That's a good one. Jennifer, talking about hobbies is a nice way to learn more about the other person and what they're passionate about. If someone mentions they like a particular hobby, you can follow up with more questions. For example, if they say they enjoy painting, you could ask, "What kind of painting do you do? Have you been working on any projects recently?"
Exactly. It gives the conversation more depth, and you might even find that you share the same hobbies or interests. For example, if someone says they like hiking, you could say, "Oh, I love hiking too." "Do you have any favorite trails around here?"
Yes, and even if you don't share the same interests, it's still a great way to keep the conversation going by showing curiosity. Another effective way to start a conversation is by giving a compliment. It could be something simple like complimenting someone's outfit, their shoes, or even their phone case. You can say something like, "That's a great jacket. Where did you get it?" It's a great way to break the ice and make the other person feel good.
Definitely, compliments can work wonders because they show that you're paying attention and being kind. People appreciate that, and it creates a positive vibe right from the start. If you compliment something specific, like, "I love your scarf. The color really suits you," it feels more genuine, and the conversation can naturally flow from there.
Right, and once you've given the compliment, the person will likely respond with a thank you and maybe even share a bit more, like where they got the item or why they like it. From there, you can continue the conversation by asking related questions or talking about something else.
And compliments don't just have to be about appearances. You could compliment someone's choice of words in a meeting or their presentation skills. For example, "I really liked the point you made earlier. It was really insightful." It's another way to build rapport and create a connection through small talk. Making small talk at work can sometimes feel tricky because it's a professional environment, but it's still important for building good relationships with your colleagues. How do you handle small talk at work, Thomas?
That's a great point, Jennifer. At work, small talk is usually a bit more focused on lighter, neutral topics, but it's still a great way to build rapport. One way to start small talk is by asking about the weekend. For example, "How was your weekend?" Or "Did you do anything fun after work yesterday?" It's casual but helps to maintain a friendly atmosphere.
Yes, and sometimes it's helpful to talk about something work-related but in a more relaxed way. For example, "What do you think about that new project we're starting?" Or "Have you had a chance to check out the new office space?" These are easy, non-intrusive topics that still fit within the professional setting.
Exactly. It's also great to ask your colleagues about their opinions or thoughts on certain work matters. But remember to keep it light. Small talk is about building connections, not diving deep into stressful topics. Asking things like, "How are you finding the new software we're using?" can lead to a more casual and friendly chat.
That's true. It's all about balancing professionalism with friendliness. When done right, small talk at work helps you build trust and can even make work more enjoyable by creating a sense of camaraderie.
Travel is another great small talk topic, especially if you're meeting someone new or in a more casual setting. People love sharing their travel experiences. You could ask something like, "Do you have any upcoming trips planned?" Or "What's the best place you've ever visited?"
Travel is such a rich topic because everyone has a story or a dream destination they'd love to talk about. Even if they haven't traveled much, you can ask them, "If you could visit any country, where would you go?" That's a fun way to get them talking about their interests and bucket list.
Definitely, and if someone has recently been on a trip, they'll probably have a lot to share. You could follow up with questions like, "How was your trip to Spain?" Or "What was the highlight of your vacation?" It's a great way to keep the conversation flowing.
It also gives you the chance to share your own travel stories, but be mindful not to dominate the conversation. For example, if someone says they visited Italy, you could add, "I went to Italy last year too." Which cities did you visit? It creates a back and forth and keeps the dialogue balanced. Music is another go-to small talk topic that almost everyone can relate to. You could ask, "What kind of music do you like?" Or "Have you been to any good concerts lately?" It's a nice way to get someone talking about their personal tastes.
Exactly. Music can spark a lot of enthusiasm. Even if your tastes are different, it's still a fun conversation. If someone mentions a band or artist you're not familiar with, you can say, "I haven't heard of them. What kind of music do they play?" It shows you're interested and willing to learn more.
And it can lead to deeper connections. For example, if you both like the same genre or band, You can talk more about that. Oh, I love them too. Have you heard their latest album? It makes the conversation more engaging and personal.
Definitely. And if the person seems really passionate about their music, you could ask, do you play any instruments yourself? That could lead to an even richer discussion and help you learn more about their hobbies and interests. At social events, small talk is essential, especially when you're meeting new people. The key is to be approachable and open to conversation. A simple, how do you know the host? Or have you been to an event like this before? Can break the ice.
That's true. At events like weddings, parties, or work gatherings, small talk helps people feel comfortable. Another good opener is asking about the food or drinks. This punch is really good. Have you tried it? It's a light, easy way to start chatting.
Yes, and at more formal events, you can keep the conversation polite and neutral. Asking things like, is this your first time attending this event? Or what do you think of the venue? Works well too. It keeps things casual without being too personal.
Right, and once the conversation is flowing, you can gradually shift to more personal topics if it feels appropriate. But remember, small talk at events should stay light. You want to make people feel comfortable, not overwhelmed. Talking about weekend plans is such a natural way to start a conversation. People often enjoy sharing what they're doing to relax or have fun. You could ask, got any plans for the weekend? Or what are you up to this Saturday?
Exactly, and if someone doesn't have plans, it can still lead to a conversation. You could say, do you usually like to relax on weekends? Or are you more into going out and staying active? It gives them an easy way to share something about their personality.
For sure, if they mention they're staying in, you can ask, do you have a favorite show you're binge watching right now? Or if they're going out, that sounds fun. What's your favorite place to hang out? It keeps things casual but engaging.
And weekend plans are also a good way to share something about yourself without going too deep. If someone asks what you're doing, you can say, I'm planning to go hiking, or I'm thinking of trying out a new restaurant. It's a nice way to keep the chat flowing. Hobbies are always a good small talk topic because they allow people to share something they're passionate about. You can ask, what do you like to do in your free time? Or do you have any hobbies you enjoy?
Yes, and people usually love talking about what they're interested in. If someone mentions a hobby you don't know much about, it's a great opportunity to learn. For instance, oh, you're into photography. What kind of camera do you use? Or I've always wanted to try that. How did you get into it?
Absolutely. Even if your hobbies are different, it's still interesting. You could share a little about yours and see if they're interested too. I love painting in my spare time. Have you ever tried it? It's a good way to keep the conversation balanced and find common ground.
And hobbies can also be a good way to plan future activities. If someone enjoys hiking or cooking, for example, you could suggest doing something together. That's awesome. Maybe we could go hiking sometime, or I'd love to try that dish you mentioned. If you're talking to someone who has a pet, that's an instant conversation starter. You could ask, do you have any pets? Or if you know they do, how's your dog doing? People love talking about their pets.
Definitely. And pets are such a personal topic that it usually brings out a lot of enthusiasm. If they have a dog, for example, you could ask, what breed is your dog? Or do you take them for walks every day? It gives them a chance to share stories and experiences.
Right, and even if you don't have pets yourself, you can still engage by asking questions or sharing any stories you might have. I've always wanted a cat. Are they as independent as people say? Or my friend has a dog that loves playing fetch. Does yours enjoy that too?
Exactly. Talking about pets is a great way to make the conversation more personal, but it still stays light and fun. It's also a chance to bond if you're both animal lovers. I grew up with pets, and I miss having one. Do you think you'll get another pet in the future? Books are another excellent small talk topic, especially if you're talking to someone who enjoys reading. You could ask, what book are you reading right now? Or do you like to read in your free time?
Yes, and even if someone isn't a big reader, you can still keep the conversation going by asking, do you prefer fiction or nonfiction? Or what's a book you'd recommend to someone who doesn't read much? It's a great way to get different perspectives.
Exactly. If they mention a book you've read, it gives you an opportunity to discuss it. I loved that book. What did you think of the ending? Or, if you haven't read it, you could say, I've heard about that one. What's it about? It opens up a lot of possibilities.
And books can also lead to deeper conversations. For example, if they're into self-improvement books, you could ask, what's the most impactful book you've read? Or if it's fiction, what's your favorite genre? It gives them a chance to share more about their interests and tastes. At the end of the day, small talk is all about building confidence in casual conversations. The more you practice, the easier it becomes to keep the conversation flowing.
Exactly. It's important to remember that small talk isn't about saying the most interesting thing, it's about connecting with the person you're talking to. Even simple topics like the weather or hobbies can lead to meaningful conversations.
And don't worry if the conversation doesn't go perfectly. The key is to stay relaxed and open. People appreciate the effort you put into engaging with them, and the more you do it, the more natural it will feel.
That's right. So next time you're in a situation where small talk is necessary, just take a deep breath and start with something simple. You'll be surprised how quickly the conversation takes off from there.
Exactly. Small talk is a skill that everyone can improve with time. So keep practicing, stay curious, and enjoy connecting with new people. You never know where a conversation might lead.
Food is a fantastic topic for small talk. Everyone has their favorites, and it's something people are usually passionate about. You can start with a simple question like, what's your favorite cuisine? Or do you enjoy cooking?
Absolutely. If they mention a favorite dish, you can ask for more details. For instance, I love Italian food. What's your go-to dish? Or what do you like to cook the most? This way, you can dive deeper into their tastes and experiences.
And if they talk about a specific restaurant they love, you could follow up with, I've heard great things about that place. What do you recommend I try there? It creates a nice flow and shows your interest in their suggestions. Definitely. Plus, food conversations can easily lead to plans. If someone mentions they love sushi, you could say, I'm always looking for good sushi spots. Would you want to go together sometime? It's a casual way to move from small talk to a potential outing.
Traveling is another great small talk topic. You could ask, have you traveled anywhere exciting recently? Or what's the best place you've ever visited? Most people love sharing their travel stories.
Exactly. If they mention a specific place, you can ask about their experience there. What did you love most about that city? Or did you try any local food while you were there? It keeps the conversation engaging and fun.
And travel can be a great way to bond over common experiences. If they mention a destination you've been to, you could say, I visited there too. Did you get a chance to see specific landmark? It creates a connection and opens up further discussion.
Right, and if someone mentions a destination they want to visit, you can add, that's on my list too. What draws you to that place? This not only keeps the conversation going, but it also lets you share travel aspirations and dreams.
Sports can be a lively topic for small talk. You can start by asking, are you into any sports? Or do you follow any teams? Most people enjoy sharing their favorite teams or players.
Exactly. If they mention a sport or team, you could ask, what do you like most about that team? Or how long have you been a fan? This shows interest in their passion and keeps the conversation going.
And if you're also a fan of a sport, it's a great way to bond. You could say, I'm a huge fan of that team too. Did you watch their last game? It creates a sense of camaraderie.
Plus, discussing upcoming games or events can lead to further engagement. If they mention a game they're excited about, you could say, "That sounds exciting." Are you going to watch it live? It keeps the conversation lively and fun. Local events and news can be good small talk topics too. You can ask, "Have you heard about any events happening in town?" Or "Did you catch that news story about local news?"
Yes, local events can lead to discussions about community interests. If they mention an event, you could ask, "That sounds interesting." Have you been before? It keeps the conversation relevant to your shared environment.
And if there's a popular event coming up, you could say, "I'm thinking about going to that concert." Are you interested? It creates an opportunity for shared experiences and potential plans.
Exactly. Discussing local events also allows you to share opinions on community issues. You might say, "What do you think about the new park opening?" "I think it's a great addition to the neighborhood." It's a way to connect on a more personal level.
So, there you have it. Small talk can cover a wide range of topics, from food and travel to movies and local events. The key is to stay curious and open to what the other person wants to share.
Right. The more you practice these conversations, the easier it will become to engage with people in various situations. Remember, small talk is all about connection, so don't be afraid to explore different topics.
Absolutely. With these tips and examples, you'll be well on your way to mastering small talk in English. Just keep it light, ask questions, and enjoy the conversation.
One important aspect of small talk that people often overlook is body language. How you carry yourself can greatly influence the flow of conversation. For example, maintaining eye contact shows that you're engaged and interested.
Definitely. Nodding occasionally while the other person is speaking can encourage them to keep talking. It shows that you're actively listening. You can also lean in slightly to indicate you're interested.
On the other hand, crossing your arms might signal that you're closed off or disinterested. So it's good to be aware of your body language and how it might be perceived during small talk.
Exactly. Additionally, smiling can make a big difference. It creates a friendly atmosphere and puts the other person at ease. A warm smile can often lead to more open and engaging conversations. Humor is another fantastic tool for small talk. A light joke or a funny observation can break the ice and make the conversation more enjoyable. It's important, though, to keep the humor appropriate for the situation.
Absolutely. You can start with a simple observation, like, "I can't believe how unpredictable the weather has been. Just yesterday, I needed an umbrella and sunglasses." It's relatable and often gets a laugh.
And if you notice something funny in your environment, don't hesitate to comment on it. For example, "That cat just chased its own tail. That's the highlight of my day." It adds a lighthearted element to your chat.
Humor can also help in easing any tension or awkwardness. If the conversation stalls, a quick, funny remark can lighten the mood and get things flowing again. When engaging in small talk, it's essential to be aware of cultural differences. What might be a friendly topic in one culture could be inappropriate in another. For example, personal questions might be seen as intrusive in some cultures.
That's a great point. Before starting a conversation, it's helpful to observe the other person's body language and responses. If they seem uncomfortable with a certain topic, be ready to change the subject.
Additionally, learning a bit about the cultural background of the person you're talking to can help tailor your conversation. You could ask about local customs or traditions in their culture, which shows respect and interest.
Absolutely. Asking questions like, "What's a traditional celebration in your country?" can open up an insightful conversation while being sensitive to cultural differences. Preparation can also enhance your small talk skills. Before attending events or gatherings, think of a few topics you're comfortable discussing. This way, you'll have a mental list ready when the opportunity arises.
Yes, you could jot down current events, recent movies, or upcoming local events as conversation starters. It gives you confidence and makes it easier to jump into conversations.
Practicing small talk with friends or family can also be helpful. You can role-play different scenarios to get comfortable with various topics and responses.
And don't forget to relax. The more at ease you are, the more natural the conversation will flow. Remember, it's not about perfection, it's about connection. As important as starting a conversation is, knowing how to end it gracefully is equally essential. You can wrap up by summarizing something positive you discussed. For example, it was great talking about travel with you.
Exactly. You could also express interest in continuing the conversation later. Saying something like, "I'd love to chat more about this next time," leaves the door open for future interactions.
Additionally, offering a polite farewell can leave a good impression. Simple phrases like, "It was nice meeting you," or "I hope you have a great day," are effective ways to conclude the chat.
And if you can, follow up later, especially if you exchanged contact information. A quick message like, "It was nice meeting you. Let's grab coffee sometime," can strengthen that initial connection.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Intermediate, Mastering Small Talk in English. We hope you found these tips on how to greet people and start conversations helpful.
Remember, small talk is a valuable skill that can open doors to new friendships and connections. The more you practice, the easier it will become.
Don't forget to tune in next time for more engaging conversations and practical tips. Until then, keep practicing your small talk skills.
Have a great day, everyone, and happy chatting!